Hello, everybody. This is the Writer's Block, and we are here to talk about our reactions to our former teachers' recent Kickstarter success. And we certainly have some things to say, such as...
Yay!
I think it's pretty amazing. Something we were talking about earlier this week was I feel like Brandon always puts really good messaging out into the world, and all of his stories are always good stories and they're well written. And I think that because he was in the financial situation where he could write 5 books and he completely took advantage of it during COVID, I'm glad that he decided to do that and is trying to put them out in a way that's probably more effective and will be a lot faster than traditional publishing.
One thing I definitely want to lead with is that we have seen Brandon up close. We are former students of his, and he's an incredibly ethical and honest and all-around great guy. He did not have to teach our college class. He can definitely afford not to, but he chooses to do this out of pure generosity because he wants to give it back to his community. Our class was taught Thursday nights, and Thursday is his give back to the community day. He does all of his generosity things on Thursday. And I found out after I finished taking his class that the salary that the university would be paying him, he does not keep, he donates. So if you contribute to this Kickstarter, rest assured your money will be put to good use. And he's not just sitting on a mountain of gold eating salad made out of $100 bills. A lot of this is going towards people. Brandon has a staff that helps him achieve the level of productivity he does. When we were in his class, he had 2 assistants assisting him. So those assistants need to be paid. When we applied to be in his class, he had a different assistant than those that assisted in the classroom, read over our applications. And so what this money is going to do is it's going to pay the salaries of people who are working with him and helping him create good stories. He's not eating cash salad.
Yeah, and I will add to that quickly. I have a friend who is in the MFA program Erica and I are currently in, and she graduated and automatically joined Brandon's team. And I think that it's really interesting, and it's a common trend that we see that when authors get big enough and they have the opportunity to fund a team of people, that they do so. So it's definitely not just Brandon inhaling all the money himself. I think it's cool to have people back him up.
And his goodness is not just limited to his employees either. I went to a writing conference that he was at maybe 6 months after we had all been in his class together. And I was totally lost when I got to the conference, didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go. And I was able to track him down after one of his panels and pull him aside for just a second and say, hey, you remember me? I was in your class. Help, I don't know what I'm doing. And he literally just took 5 minutes, went to the side of the hallway with me and just said, okay, here's what you need to do. And just out of the goodness of his heart, helped me out when he could have been like, I'm too busy. I've got places I need to be. He really is a quality human being. And so I'm really glad to see him succeeding.
I was just going to say, I remember back in the day just seeing his class online, the fact that he not only teaches this class, right, just to give back to the community, as has been said, and doesn't even keep a salary from it, just that in and of itself is amazing. But then that he was actively working to get the information out there, right? Like he wasn't even profiting from putting out videos of it. And I know there has been different iterations of it that have happened over time. There was even a website briefly that I think one grad student was running associated with the videos, and and you could literally put up short stories and stuff. And I actually did some of that. I got some feedback on that site. So there's just a lot of tools for writers, people who are trying to do what Brandon is doing, that he creates for the community. And that's really, really awesome to have a writer of his level and his success giving back in this way to the community is pretty darn awesome, because most others to see writers doing this would be maybe like masterclass or something, right? And no shade against masterclass. I think masterclass is a really good deal and I've used it, but Brandon's stuff is out there just free, so that's pretty awesome.
And I guess for just full transparency for our users, because I think I'm going to be the least experienced one in this chat when it comes to kickstarting. But I think there, as Erica mentioned right before we started recording, there's sometimes an expectation if someone makes a lot of money on Kickstarter, that there may be something potentially shading going on, which just seems like the saddest thing if there's been accusations of that, particularly because Brandon is so open about I guess giving back and trying to build a writing community. So yeah, I'm gonna have very little about Kickstarter, guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna be here for the ride.
That's a great point, Mari, to bring up, because I remember very vividly about 7 years ago, there was another author Kickstarter in the news, but for completely opposite reasons. I read and enjoyed Princess of Thorns by Stacey J. It's a Sleeping Beauty retelling. The publisher didn't authorize a sequel, so she tried to kickstart one, asking for a very modest $10,000, explaining the description that some of that money would go into production costs and some of that would pay for all the basic living expenses you need to write a book. If you're going to not be putting that time into a day job, you need to have money to buy groceries or put gas in your car. And people on the internet took issue with the fact that she was asking for grocery money. And they said, this is unethical. We don't want to donate to it. And she responded by taking down the Kickstarter because of the backlash she got. Even though nothing she did was shady, she just was asking for the basic minimum amount of money you need for self-maintenance while you're creating art. So not everybody will have the experience that Brandon does. Not everybody achieves great Kickstarter success. And you can get backlash for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes just the fact that you're asking for money in the first place can be viewed as controversial, and that Stacey J's story does belong to a previous era. 7 years ago, Kickstarter was new, so some people saw it as panhandling on the side of the road and asked, okay, why do we feel like we have to give you money? But now we belong to a creative culture of Patreon and other forms of funding. So I would just say this is the standard now. You can expect to see authors you love asking for money.
I think it's worth pointing out just how exceptional this Kickstarter is. We are currently 3.5 days into the, or is it 2.5 days? I don't know, into the Kickstarter. And he's $300,000 away from breaking the all-time Kickstarter record. He's at $20 million as of right now, which is Thursday evening, March the 3rd. And I do have a little bit of experience here. I was tangentially involved with another Kickstarter project about 1.5 years ago for the role-playing game Asunder. That was a successful project, but it was a successful project to the tune of $120,000 on an initial, I believe, $30,000 goal. In which the novel that I wrote was part of the package that was put out, and we were super jazzed that we got that much. But that's like the average successful Kickstarter, and so to look at something like this speaks to the amount of community building and decades of work that Brandon has done of caring for his fans, of communicating with and being available to them, in order to garner this kind of immediate knee-jerk response where everybody's like, well, I'm giving him my money. It's really, I don't know if there's any other author out there that has done the legwork to have this kind of successful campaign. If there are others, you could probably count them all on one hand.
I mean, it's really amazing. So, regardless of how, shifting to sort of the writing business model, even if you aren't a Brandon fan or, don't like his books, I mean, what he has done just showcases what someone could do. And I know that there's mixed reactions about this, in terms of some people saying, this is going to completely change publishing. Other people saying like, well, only Brandon can do this. He's a unicorn, so on and so forth. But successful Kickstarters for writers are becoming much more normal. We can see right at this exact same time, we've got, for example, Mother of Learning that's running up. It had a goal of 10,000. It is already at 91,000. I say already, I just mean it's got 4 days left. So I shouldn't say already, but it has gotten well over that. Now we could say, well, Mother of Learning was like the top story on Royal Road, which is a free serialized site for a while. So definitely built a community, but it shows it on a smaller scale. Mother of Learning built a community over time on free websites, just releasing stuff for free, having stuff on Patreon to fund. And then finally now it's coming out as something, you can get in book form. And I just think this shows another, alternate to self-publishing, because previously it's sort of been, okay, I could traditionally publish, and that route, there's a million videos about that. I think most people could find that information out they want, or they could self-publish, right? But then there's now this kind of almost new one of release stuff for free get funded on Patreon while you're doing that, then eventually run a Kickstarter campaign when you've got a big enough following. Or you could be a hybrid author like Michael Sullivan, who's got a Kickstarter out right now for his second book in his series that is in the final 20 hours, and it had a goal of 30,000. It's up to 188,000. So again, Michael Sullivan has released a lot of books. Initially he did self-publish, then publishing house, but he didn't like how traditional publishing always wanted his audio rights. And so you can, Michael J. Sullivan has tons of stuff to say about that. You can read about it, but I'm not saying that this is, going to change publishing overnight, but this is not just something that's a one-off. Other people have been doing this and recognizing for this, for a bit. And I do think it is going to become more normal, and it's already seeming to become more accepted by, our society, as Erica pointed out.
That's a great point, Jeff, that what we typically call self-publishing isn't really self-publishing. You're still dependent on a platform. You're dependent on Amazon because you're going to release through Kindle or other Amazon properties. And that means you are beholden to Amazon. And if you want, if they're taking your money, they can kick you off their platform if they don't like your book. They can keep you on the platform and make a percentage of the profits off your book, but deny you the ability to run targeted ads. Amazon is a platform you can get kicked off from, and so is Kickstarter. There are people who've been kicked off Kickstarter and GoFundMe and every crowdsourcing platform. So you still have to be beholden to an entity, but to some degree, you are in a lot more of control here.
And as being, I think, the primary holdout for trying to pursue solely traditional publishing, which will probably be hilarious when I watch this video in 5 years and I'm probably self-publishing. But I think about when we were in Brandon's class, he talked about in the dark ages after he published his first book, what his primary technique was on the weekends, he would personally drive to bookstores and go to book signings where there were like 2 to 3 people. And I feel like that's a pretty common move that a lot of new authors see, is trying to start off slow, trying to gain attention. In the dark ages for Brandon, it was physically going to bookstores. And I think it's interesting in our era today, what is metaphorically are going to bookstores where there's 2 to 3 people signing up. If you're starting a Kickstarter for a piece that you're working on, or if you're doing something free via Royal Road or another site along those lines, how are you trying to visit bookshops and put that time in order to get published, in order to get popular enough so that you can have your own $20 million Kickstarter?
Which, let's be honest, is what we all really want to have.
I mean, yes, please.
I mean, I want to eat cash salad.
Right?
Yeah.
The thing that was fascinating to me, to your point, Erica, is the campaign, his campaign, Brandon's, the way they're going to release ebooks is not, at least in my understanding, through Amazon. They're releasing them as just files that are sent as a link, and they're not even going to be protected. So you could conceivably get the ebook and then just send it to a friend. And so one, it's amazing because it is cutting out Amazon. It's just like, no, I'm simply going to send you my novel. And that's something pretty amazing we can do as writers. We have this ability to just send, our product. And so to do that and to cut out the middleman is pretty exciting, because Amazon does take, a large cut. Nothing against, necessarily self-publishing on Amazon. I think there's a lot of greatness associated with that and the whole movement that happened there. But it does feel like we're starting to see the beginning of another potential movement, which is super exciting. I will say one other quick thing to this. This is why some serialized authors like Wandering In, for instance, and I want to say Mother of Learning does this as well. They have their own website. So they are not even dependent upon the free publishing serialized platform. Like, yes, they do put it there, but then they also have their own website. So no matter what happens, you can go and visit it there. And I think we might see kind of, again, more of that self-protection, that self-ownership. And sure, it takes time, but we can also see the dividends that this is, paying off for writers like Brandon at this massive amount, but even for other writers as well.
Yeah, there is this interesting conversation. I mean, it's so cool to follow along with Brandon's Kickstarter and just see the numbers continually rolling upward and to sort of get in on that train. It's really exciting. But to know that this is something that functions at different levels, right? That you can, even if you've just got a tiny following, So long as you've got, a few hundred or maybe 1,000 folks who are interested in your stuff, with enough time and enough goodwill, you can then say, hey, let's do a Kickstarter or let's do a crowdfunding something or other, and actually make some money back off of your work after throwing it out there for free for a good long while. And it's definitely a different way of looking at it. But as the traditional publishing model struggles and the Amazon publishing model struggles, it feels like a viable third path, increasingly so, whereas previously it felt like pretty thin ice out there.
One last little story I just wanted to share that I remember when I was taking Brandon's class, we were talking with him about self-publishing. And he said that, if he was doing it again now, like if he was becoming, a writer now, he would self-publish. And for context, this was like 4 years ago now, right? Or something. And so this is a bit ago. I think Amazon has become shakier more recently, the more I hear about people having difficulty promoting themselves on that market. But anyway, point is that he was like, I would be a hybrid author at this stage. And he talked about how he had tried doing some limited releases of some of his novellas. I want to say the one about where someone's got a whole bunch of personalities in their head, right? And they didn't really do too much. And I could tell when he was talking about it that he hadn't quite cracked it yet. You know what I mean? He was thinking about self-publishing. It was on his radar. He knew that he was in more the traditionally published landscaping, but he was testing the waters. He wanted to see what he could do. And my goodness, to go from that conversation where he hasn't figured it out to now where he is on the edge of being the most successful Kickstarter of all time. Like, I mean, the man, incredible, just business knowledge here in terms of figuring out what he has about the market, in terms of getting onto YouTube as a way to communicate with his audience instead of, doing these conventions because he couldn't, and how quickly he built up that following on YouTube to then have a release like this. And also to have all these tiers to what he's doing. Like, the reason it's so high is because it's not just, oh, hey, I wrote 4 books. Do you want to buy them? It's, I wrote 4 books and I'm going to turn this into an experience for you. I'm going to turn it into like a subscription model where you get one every, couple months. And, oh, do you want some extra swag? And the fact that it's all mysterious is super fun, that we don't even know like what the books are about. Like, I know he's done some follow-up streams reading the book and stuff, but he's really creating something unique with this. So I think really looking at all aspects of it, if anyone does want to be a writer out there, is just such an opportunity for all of us. And it's so exciting. And at least for me, it's been really motivating as, someone who's looking to still break in. It's awesome. Any other closing thoughts from the group about Brandon and his Kickstarter?
I thought that was an amazing closing thought, so I'm just going to sit in awe.
Yay, Brandon. I fully expect this to be the most fun Kickstarter of all time by the time I wake up tomorrow. At the very least, it'll be the most fun Kickstarter by the time I post this video. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.